bells pealed out across Melbourne and Sydney on what is a day for some of mourning, for some of deep pain.
A lot of survivors of child sexual abuse have post-traumatic stress disorder, and so this kind of unexpected news or seeing things, in the media can be very triggering.
Services in both cities remembered their former Archbishop, who ascended to the most senior ranks of the church.
One of the significant things that George Pell did was to place Australia on the map of the Catholic Church and inside the Vatican.
I feel pretty devastated, to be honest. He was a really good man.
I remember him with great affection as a great man and spiritual leader of the church.
But, as in life, in death, George Pell divides opinion.
The disappointment is that the institution of the church, as reflected through the senior archbishops, Cardinal Pell included, was a church that increasingly was out of touch.
On the world stage, Vatican watchers say Pell's campaign to overhaul the Holy See Treasury will endure.
The plays which he called are still sort of being unfolding on the field, and so he was extremely influential in the Pope's agenda of financial reform.
But back home, it's his track record on dealing with clerical abuse that's in the spotlight, especially among survivors.
I'm not shedding a tear at all. He could have done some good and tried to right some wrongs, but instead he just offended the brand.
Some defend Pell's efforts in the 90s to address child sexual abuse claims.
Certainly, he was the first church leader in Australia to actually do something positive and concrete.
The Melbourne response should be remembered as the disaster it was. I mean, that was a way of trying to minimise compensation payments.
And Pell's reputation was hit by the damning Royal Commission finding that he not only knew by the early 70s of clerical abuse, but considered ways to avoid gossip about it.
I wish he'd stayed alive for another 10 years so he could have suffered public opprobrium.
Even after his criminal conviction was overturned, Pell was still facing a civil claim from the father of one of the former choir boys he'd been accused of abusing.
The claim will continue against the church and against any estate that George Pell may have left behind.
The best that survivors can hope for now is that his passing opens the path perhaps for the church to take a more modern approach.
As congregations and the community absorb Pell's death, the path ahead is rocky for those still dogged by the shadows in the church's history.